Is this Chiefs offense back to its championship form, or will we continue to see them struggle? It's been very interesting with the Chiefs so far this year. We know that they have that amazing upside. We just haven't seen Mahomes, we haven't seen Hill, we haven't seen Kelsey really live up to what they've done in the past. I think that has a lot to do with the offensive line, and I do think defenses are starting to figure out how to kind of stop their deep threat, and they're just not making the correct adjustments. Thoughts on, the Chiefs? Can they get back to their normal form against the Raiders?
Yeah, man, I'm really excited for this matchup. I do think that eventually we're going to start seeing the Chiefs get back to their championship form. I think a lot of the regression that we're currently seeing has to do with just unlucky turnovers. And Pat Mahomes, one of his things is he makes risky throws, he makes risky plays, but that's also what makes him excellent, is he has the ability to convert those. The problem is when you have these dumbass tips, drop passes and things like that, that leads to turnovers. And to your point, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but their offensive line is sketch, man. And it has been for a while. And we saw that in the Super Bowl. He got destroyed. I think he had more rushing yards trying to stay alive than both teams did in general. So if they can put it back together, man, I think this is going to be an exciting game to see if the Chiefs are ready to get right.
I really think on the Raiders side of things for this Sunday night football matchup, I really think that the Raiders people are going to be down on the Raiders because they lost to the Giants last week. And that game was really interesting because there was a lot of mistakes made by the Raiders. That was their first game back after all this nonsense, obviously with the Henry Ruggs situation. They also released Damon Arnett, who was another first-round pick with Ruggs. That game, maybe they were just a little distracted. Maybe Carr was distracted. He had 3 bad turnovers in that game, including two turnovers at the end of the game that really cost him. But they should have won that game, and they were dominating that game. They really were.
And to be fair, man, I think people are kind of discrediting them because, to your point, that they lost to the Giants. But for a team that's got as much going on as they do right now, I'm actually surprised that we haven't seen more of an impact on them. I mean, even with the John Gruden stuff, I think they won that week.
They're 2-1. They're 2-1 since Gruden.
So, I mean, it's definitely something not to forget about. And again, this is we're starting to get to that time of the year where we're getting these division rivalry games.
Yes. Anything can happen.
It's different, right? It's different. Anything can happen.
And look, the Raiders are at home for this game. That gives them a little bit of help. You get some support from your fans. You're in a normal environment that you're used to. I think that can help. And this is a division rivalry game. We've seen crazy things happen this year, especially in the last week or two. We've seen some crazy upsets. I really think the Raiders can stay in this game, and I think they could potentially win this game. It all just depends on how the Chiefs come out. Do the Raiders rally around all this adversity and they step up and Carr steps up and they can come out and play well, or do they just collapse? Is this where they start to go downhill? I don't know. But the Chiefs should, in theory, win this game pretty easily. But we just haven't seen them. Last week, what was it, 13-7? The Green Bay shut them down completely against a backup quarterback. Barely won that game. If Jordan Love did anything in that game, they would have lost. So I'm really actually pretty excited in this game. There's a lot to talk about. Let's look at our Vegas lines here. KC traveling to Vegas. Kansas City they're road favorites, favored by 3, -149 on the money line. It's a 52 over/under, pretty decent. Both these defenses aren't really up to par. They're in the bottom half of the league. The interesting thing here to me is the ownership totals here. I think it's just mainly a salary thing, but they're pretty tight. We've seen big gaps lately in these ownership totals. And I think this is pretty nice. What does this tell you, first of all, with the matchup, and what does it tell you with the ownership totals? Do you have to stick with 4 2s this week?
So as far as the matchup goes, it's kind of interesting to see that Kansas City is still getting that kind of championship love from Vegas, right? Like if anything, I would say this should be probably more of a pick 'em. But I get they're probably accounting in some of the stuff that's been going on with Vegas. I definitely think that this should be a competitive game, and that brings up the roster construction point, right? Everyone is probably just going to auto generate 3-3 lineups.
Yeah.
I think this is a great opportunity to go with 2-4 or 4-2s, right? You can grab Pat and somebody else, and then just run it back with four Raiders. And we'll see pricing here, but obviously there's some opportunities that are going to open up with Henry Ruggs not being available. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a little bit more flexibility to jam in some weird guys we may not normally play. But I'm looking forward to, and I'm not going to be doing anything else, I think, on this game.
We also have Deshaun Jackson, who was recently signed. Don't know what kind of impact we'll have. He was just signed, less than a week ago. So I don't really know if there's going to be anything in the game plan for him. But it's worth, when we get to the salary, we'll talk a little bit about that. When it comes to injuries, we just have CEH is still out. Now there was some offensive line injury stuff for the Chiefs going on, but really not a whole lot, fantasy-wise, not a whole lot to really talk about. So let's just get right into this breakdown. All right, so we're going position by position here, guys. Do us a favor, throw us a quick like. If you like our content, go ahead and subscribe. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers by the end of this month. We really appreciate that help. So we're going into Patrick Mahomes, 12.4K. And Derek Carr is 10.6K. Now, I personally, recently we've been able to fade Patrick Mahomes for the first time in a long time and feel comfortable about that. And I think this is a similar position. With his salary being that high, you just can't get him, Tyreek, and Kelsey together, and that's usually how it's been, pretty much since the beginning of time. You can't fit those guys together. But in this case, I do not have a problem with fading Mahomes and putting the 2 or 3 best position players for the Chiefs in the flex and just getting rid of Mahomes in this game. Am I wrong about that? And I honestly like Derek Carr a lot more in this game.
Yeah, I don't think that you're wrong. Patrick Mahomes is really expensive. I don't know that I'm going to intentionally fade him, but there's going to be lineups where I'm not necessarily prioritizing him. This could be an interesting. I mean, if you're going to run a 4-2 stack, it might be interesting to throw in like Darrell Williams and Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelsey, something along those lines, and then you can fade Mahomes that way.
Yeah.
But the salary that you're going to save and probably the ownership. The leverage that you'll get by not playing him, you don't even have to do it that often, right? You can probably fade him and, if you're running 20, maybe 3-4 of your lineups and still be pretty solid. So I'm with you on this, though. I think Mahomes is going to be the guy that I'm not necessarily jamming in. Derek Carr is really going to be the guy for me. I mean, he's 10.6, which is about where we expect quarterbacks to be priced at.
Yeah.
But, this is probably, KC is favored here. So we're expecting Derek Carr to need to throw to keep the team in the game. So I just want more of that. And especially with these initial ownership projections that I'm seeing over here on Roto Grinders, if he's really going to be under 40-45%, then give me all that.
Yeah, totally. And look, last week he only scored 13 fantasy points, but they could not punch it in the red zone. That's why they lost that game. They got one quick touchdown right off the bat. And besides that, they were in the red zone multiple times and they could not punch it in. You add 1 or 2 touchdowns to that, one guy catches the ball, it changes everything. And they still barely lost that game. And if you look at Patty Mahomes, the last 3 weeks, he's been slinging the ball. 37 attempts, 48 attempts, 35 attempts. Then they're 2-1 in those games. And he's still scored under 15 fantasy points in all 3 of those games. He's really only gone off like 4 times this year. So do I think he's the best quarterback in the NFL? Yes. Do I think he's a future Hall of Famer? Yes. But in a situation like this, he doesn't have to pass for 4 touchdowns for them to win. And I think that just makes it, if he was a little cheaper and you could build with him a little bit better, I think that makes it obvious. I'm still going to get a lot of Patrick Mahomes. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not telling you to uncheck him and get 0. But based on each individual lineup, if you want to put Darrell Williams in instead of him, I think that's a good idea. And you save some money and get some higher end guys in the rest of the flex. So that's my thought on it. I'm getting 0 of him at captain, not a single ounce, because he's going to be the highest owned captain. And I don't think that in this game there's players with just as high as upside as him that are way less owned and way cheaper. Anything else to add before we go to running backs?
No, man, I agree with everything.
All right, let's start with who do you want to start with? Vegas?
Yeah, let's start with Vegas.
All right. By the way, these running backs, besides Peyton Barber, every one of these guys I'm interested in, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I mean, so I'm really excited to do this segment here because we're going back to my Alabama backfield days, right?
Yep.
Got Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake here. I definitely think that this is a good opportunity to get them involved, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at Kenyon Drake. He had 16 points last week, 17 the week before, 21. Josh Jacobs, 13 and a half, 15.8, 15, right? So I really don't mind taking flyers on both these guys. And honestly, Kenyon Drake at 4,400, that's a better price than, or that's worth playing over the kickers and defense just easily, right?
Yeah.
So I think that these are two guys that you can really jam into your lineups to really kind of get different. I understand that this should be, everyone's expecting a bit of a shootout here, but Kansas City's run defense is not great.
Yeah.
And Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake, they can get 30, 35 carries between the two of them. You keep giving them opportunities, they do have game-breaking ability. So I really, really like both these running backs, and especially Kenyon Drake at 4,400.
Yeah.
Right, when we get to building, there's a very good chance that he's just going to end up in a lot of our lineups by default.
Yep.
Normally we punt with like a $200, $400 player, but at 4,400, Kenyon Drake has, if he gets 16 fantasy points at 4,400, he's going to be in the optimal lineup.
Absolutely.
And then just, kind of where you're going with this, Peyton Barber's not even in my player pool over here, but Jalen Richard and Alec Ingold, we're short Henry Ruggs. That's their big play threat. So Jalen Richard, he may be able to get some volume in the passing game and in the screen game. He has game-breaking speed, and he has the ability to make these different plays. So I definitely expect to get both of these guys involved in the passing game. Just look for some extra creativity. I think you can get different by throwing in some of these random guys from Las Vegas so that you can try and fill in the hole that Ruggs left. Yeah. And again, I know that these guys aren't wide receiver, right? So they're not going to be like direct replacements, but those big plays that Ruggs would normally get, it's got to go to somebody else, right? The Raiders are still going to try and get those chunk plays. Yeah. I think the screen game is really the way to do it.
Ingold had, 3 targets last week? I mean, he was involved in that game. He was on the field. He was involved. And a guy that's $400 getting 3 or 4 targets, one of those turns into a touchdown. And my God, he's in the optimal for sure. Jalen Richard's on the field a lot when it comes to special teams. He's getting kickoff returns. He's getting some screens out of the backfield. I think you absolutely have to involve one, if not 2, of these guys in almost every one of your lineups. I'm not afraid of Josh Jacobs, and putting Josh Jacobs at captain and Kenyon Drake in the flex, boy, no one's going to do that, and you're still going to have a lot of upside by being able to fit in all the best Chiefs on the other side.
And for Alec Ingold, bro, he has 1 week where he had 4 fantasy points. Pretty much every other week that he's actually gotten involved, he's had over 5, right? 5.8, 7, 6.2, and at $400 on a slate like this, that might be the difference between you being able to get to Mahomes, Carr, and a couple other studs, as opposed to having to play Mahomes and Byron Pringle or whatever. Yeah. So
Kenyon Drake, to me, like the offense is. It's pretty clear where Carr wants to go on this offense. When it comes to Mahomes, there's like 10 guys who can score a touchdown on that team. I mean, there's so many different options. which is nice because you can go out of your way to get some of the cheap guys like Pringle and Demarcus Robinson and, a lot of those kind of guys. But to me, I think Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake, I'm going to really utilize them in a lot of my lineups. I'm going to have more Josh Jacobs, but Kenyon Drake's going to be under 15% owned. He's $4,400. I like you said, instead of getting defenses or kickers, you go with Kenyon Drake every single time. That's my stance. All right, so going to the other side here, Kansas City.
Yeah, so Kansas City is another interesting situation here. They're just going to keep forcing me to play Darrell Williams at 7,200. We see the volume he's getting involved. He had 19 carries last week, 13 targets the week prior. Yeah, and that's, at his price, that's just too good for me. You add a touchdown to his total last week, and he's in the optimal for whatever showdown slate you're running against the Packers.
Yeah.
And again, his ownership projection is low. This is just going to be a game where everybody flocks to the passing game, and it's obvious, and it makes sense. I don't blame you, but I also don't mind getting Darrell Williams. You're playing against a porous Vegas rush defense as well. These are not good run defenses.
Yeah.
So I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity here. And then even if you don't want to run Darrell Williams, I still think that guys like Derek Gore and Jerick McKinnon are absolutely in play. Again, very suppressed ownership from what I'm seeing in these initial projections, but their pricing is right where you want it to be, and they're getting involved in the game. Jerick McKinnon is getting targets, so if he gets receptions and a couple yards, who knows? He could bust out a touchdown on a screen pass as well. At $800, that's what I'm looking for. Derek Gore, who I'm pretty sure is this Frank's son?
No, it's not, but that was the joke. That was the running joke. I wouldn't, yeah.
So anyways, look, he didn't get a whole bunch of volume last week, but it looks like Andy Reid likes him. And you know how Andy Reid is, man. He's just, if you get a hot hand, he's going to keep you in the game. There was, I think it was the showdown slate the weekend prior.
Giants,
where he had 11 attempts and a touchdown.
And he had all the goal line opportunities, every one of them.
And that had everybody on the entire planet tilting. So
yeah,
what was he, 0.7% owned?
Yeah. One dude had him pretty much. Nobody had him.
And again, super suppressed ownership here. This is McKinnon and Gore, and on the other side of the ball with Vegas. These are the kind of value guys that are going to be that are going to allow you to jam in some of those studs.
Yes.
I'm not trying to get Hill and Kelsey in the same lineup, right? So I just need to find a way to get the Raiders stack I want and comfortably jam in a couple of these punts, which again, I don't even know if they're full punts.
They're not.
Jerick McKinnon's going to get 3 targets and 3 receptions for 26 yards at $800. I don't mind that.
All these running backs are going to be under 10% owned, and on both sides of the ball, the backup running backs, that is. And look, Derek Gore is probably my least favorite out of all of them because I just don't think he's going to get enough volume unless Andy Reid wakes up and he decides he wants to screw the entire slate. Then he probably will. But Jerick McKinnon at $800, and on the other side of the ball, those low price guys underneath Kenyon Drake. I think you can just consider trying to get a lot of these running backs in because I think the running backs on this slate are just going to be so low owned for I don't know why. Just because it's not it's sexier to go out and get Tyreek Hill and Hunter Renfrow and the tight ends, but I think the running backs have just as high of an upside. All right, so and look, I like Darrell Williams at captain quite a bit in this game. We did that last time with him, and I think it's a situation with a team that's favored. You might get some opportunity for Darrell Williams to run the ball, and I don't mind putting Patty Mahomes and Darrell Williams in the same lineup. But in a situation, if you wanted to not play Patty Mahomes, Darrell Williams might be the guy to go with. You know what I mean? All right. Yeah. So wide receivers here. So we'll start with Kansas City. Tyreek Hill's 11K as usual. He's usually in that 11K range. Mecole Hardman 6,400, priced up a little bit. Byron Pringle priced up a little bit more than usual at 3K. You got Demarcus Robinson at 2K, Marcus Kemp 200, and Josh Gordon 200. I mean, this is very hard to decipher every single week because Mecole Hardman, Byron Pringle, and Demarcus Robinson, all three of those guys can go off. I'd say Demarcus Robinson is probably the least likely to, and Mecole Hardman is probably the most likely to. But we've seen each one of these guys have their shot. And if they're able to shut down Hill, you're going to see the doors open up a lot more for these guys in these 5 to 10 yard routes across the middle. And, getting PPR points is going to be important for them. So thoughts on, all these guys? Are you interested in going down to Josh Gordon and Kemp at all?
I honestly, I'm not really all that interested in even coming off Tyreek Hill. I think, just looking at the running back options there, um, I'd much rather play Kenyon Drake over Mecole Hardman, or instead of Byron Pringle, I might be comfortable going to Alec Ingold, for example.
Yeah.
And that'll give me the ability to pay up for Hill, Kelsey, and Waller. I think those are the priorities, and I think you need to kind of figure out how you're going to get to those guys. Now, the one thing I do want to call out here is Mecole Hardman is seeing some pretty suppressed ownership, under 20% on these initial projections as well. So I think you might be okay to kind of like hedge not having most of these guys by maybe running a lineup or two with him at captain at 6,400. So if he does have one of those breakout games, you're not completely dead in the water. But again, like the value that we found already, like I'm just trying to get to Hill, Waller, and Kelsey, and then from there jamming in whatever I can get. And I really don't like these prices. We know that Patty can get the ball to any one of these guys, right? He can make any one of these guys an optimal player for any showdown slate. But we know that Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are going to get a bulk of the targets. I mean, look at Tyreek Hill, 11 and 18 last week.
Yeah.
And then Kelce, you're looking at 8, 7, 12. So Kelsey's even a little bit lower than we would expect, and none of the other guys are crushing. So I'm just focusing on Tyreek Hill. I don't know that I really want any of these other guys. Mecole Hardman would probably be the only one that I'm really looking at.
Interesting thing to look at here. Now, Mecole Hardman is clearly the number 2 when it comes to being on the field. And most likely just the number 2 in general with targets and routes run and everything like that. But Byron Pringle, and it looks like Josh Gordon is actually trending up, and he's getting more snaps than Demarcus Robinson. So just in seeing that, last week, Gordon had 30% of the snaps, and Demarcus Robinson had 20. The week before, Josh Gordon had 41% of the snaps, and Demarcus Robinson had 38. He's running more routes, Josh Gordon is. So if anybody is the odd man out here, I think it's Demarcus Robinson at 2K. And Josh Gordon is trending up, and I don't think that people are necessarily seeing that. The projections are saying that, but we haven't really seen a lot of Josh Gordon. So I wouldn't mind getting a couple lineups with him. I'm not even going to have any Marcus Kemp at all, but I will have a couple lineups with Josh Gordon because I do think he's going to have one of these games where he gets 4 or 5 receptions for like 50, 60 yards, you would think. So I'm going to try to get him involved a little bit. But I agree with you. I would rather go with the running backs. I'd rather instead of going with Pringle, I'd rather pay up and just get Drake,
Well, and I still think Josh Gordon is probably a better play than Byron Pringle or Mecole Hardman, at least Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson, right? I mean, again, so $200, there's just very little risk. If you pay $6,400 for Mecole Hardman, he has to hit a certain fantasy point total, or you're dead. But if Josh Gordon at 200 goes out and gets 0 for 0, right, you're not completely crushed. So that's really the thing here, is the opportunity cost to play some of these guys is just way too high.
I agree. All right, let's move to the other side. Let me take this one here, because I feel pretty strongly about the Raiders here when it comes to wide receivers. Everybody loves Hunter Renfrow at 8,400, and I think you should. He's the kind of guy that'll get you 10 plus targets, and he has a really high floor. But to me, look, Bryan Edwards is $3,000 cheaper at 5,400, and Zay Jones is $600. Now we'll talk about Deshaun Jackson here in a little bit because that's a wild card. But Bryan Edwards is still the guy that's on the field the most out of these wide receivers. Bryan Edwards, 94% of the snaps last week. Hunter Renfrow, 65%. Zay Jones had 95% of the snaps last week. So Bryan Edwards and Zay Jones are on the field the most. Hunter Renfrow is receiving most of the targets, and he's getting most of the target share. But when it comes to air yards, Bryan Edwards is number 1 out of these guys, followed by Zay Jones. So, and also routes run. Last week, both of these guys had 8 or 9 more routes run than Hunter Renfrow. So do I like Hunter Renfrow? Absolutely. I don't think I'm going to fade him. But I think my point here is that don't be so down on Bryan Edwards. He had 4 targets. That's not a lot, but that team was struggling last week. I think Bryan Edwards is still like potentially the number one upside guy here. And I'm not super down on him. I'm going to get a lot above the field than him. He's going to be around 15 to 20% owned. I actually like putting him at captain a little bit too in this particular game. And Zay Jones is $600. That's the biggest misprice on this entire slate. You're talking about a number 3, potentially number 2 wide receiver at $600. So thoughts on these 3 guys? Hunter Renfrow is obviously the number 1 option here, but do you like Edwards and Zay Jones as much as I do?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. Hunter Renfrow, I think that his price is a little high. The one thing that I think we need to note for that is just I expect that will impact his ownership overall. So I don't mind having at least being with the field maybe slightly over if he stays kind of where he's at, and that's just pure leverage. It's not me really looking at the name or anything. He's the number 1 receiver. Nobody has him, and he's going to get workhorse load.
Yeah.
So that being said, I still absolutely agree with you. I prefer Bryan Edwards. I think at 5,400, he's just going to be in a lot of my lineups, especially when I'm doing 4 stacks with the Raiders. I mean, 5,400 for the guy that, again, you just lost Henry Ruggs, so you're going to have opportunities for those chunk plays. So who's going to get it? Is it going to be Bryan Edwards? It's not going to be Hunter Renfrow. That's really not his thing.
Exactly.
He's just like, he's Wes Welker again.
Yeah.
But in Deshaun Jackson, I don't know that he's going to come out and really do anything in this offense. And I know you said you want to talk about him a little bit, but
go ahead. Yeah.
At 4,200 again, like I'd rather just play Kenyon Drake.
Yeah. 100%.
So like I don't plan on having any Deshaun Jackson. So as far as I'm concerned, you have Renfrow, Edwards, and Zay Jones. Whoever Dylan Stoner isn't going to get snaps.
Yeah.
I think this is why we've seen some awesome production from the running backs, is because they're rotating these 3 or 4 guys in to help get some of the pressure off of the wide receiver core. But with that being said, I think the guys you got to prioritize here are Bryan Edwards and again Zay Jones, $600.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean he had 4 targets last week. He had 1 reception, 20 yards, 3 points. He gets 2 more receptions with nothing, right? No yards. All of a sudden, you're at 5 points for a $600 guy. That's the kind of stuff that we're looking for, so that we can jam in these high-priced players. So
exactly, I agree. All right. So let's move over to tight ends here. We've got Darren Waller at 9,600, Foster Moreau at 2,600. Both of these guys are in play. Darren Waller is going to get you 10 targets most likely every game. He hasn't been going off as much as we're used to seeing him, like in the beginning of the year and the end of last year. But he's getting involved, and I mean, he's one of the best tight ends in the NFL. We're seeing a good tight end matchup in this game. I don't think you can ever fade him just because he's had a couple bad games. I mean, last week he still had 16 fantasy points. In a showdown slate, that guy's probably going to be in the optimal unless it's like a 70-point total or something and everybody's getting scores. I just think you got to think about Waller at captain. You got to think about Waller in the flex. He's probably their best player, and he's definitely their best target. So Moreau, thoughts on Moreau, and obviously Darren Waller, we don't need to talk too much about him. But
no, we don't need to talk about Darren Waller.
But
I mean,
Foster Moreau is an option here too.
Yeah. Foster Moreau is definitely in play. Obviously, Darren Waller is going to be in. We got the top 3 guys: Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller. I'm going to have at least one of them in every lineup I can.
Yeah.
Foster Moreau, I don't think he's terrible. The price does concern me a little bit at 2,600. Just given what we've seen up until this point, there's just too many viable punt options that are projected for similar outputs, right?
Yeah.
If I got a $200 guy that's has same upside as a $2,600 guy, I'm really just gonna start focusing on the cheaper dude here. So again, Foster Moreau's in play. We know that he has the ability to go get a touchdown, random receptions here or there.
And week 7, Waller was out. So, that changes everything. Waller's in, he's just not going to get as many opportunities.
Right. We see that output, right? He had 18 fantasy points in week 7 against Philly, but to your point, Waller was out. Now, again, back against Pittsburgh, like week 2 or whatever, he had 3 targets, 2 receptions, and a touchdown for 11 points. But at 2,600, right, you need that floor of about 7 to 10 points. Otherwise, he's not paying off.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's just less risky to go with one of the punt options for like two $100.
I agree. Travis Kelce, 10K straight up. He's been. I was so frustrated here. People like were bashing him a few weeks ago because that he was like washed and shit like that. Travis Kelce is not washed. They're having a rough time on offense. He's still the best tight end in the NFL, in my opinion. 10K.
Yeah, dude. Nobody's.
Come on.
Their offensive line is bad. The plays that they need, or the plays that they have, are deep routes, right? These are patterns that take a second to set up. So if you don't have that time, if you don't have an offensive line that's consistently building a solid pocket for Patty to sit in, he's not going to be able to get some of these guys involved. And Travis has probably had some of his own. Travis, he and I are on first name basis. Dude's my homie. But look, he's had some struggles. But again, I think that's more exemplary of the offense than it is anything else. They're having their struggles on as a whole. So I'm looking at his ownership percentage. That's all that matters to me. He's under 40%.
That's insane.
Jam him in.
It's insane.
I'm playing him. It doesn't make sense not to.
He might be like the 5th or 6th highest owned captain.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
That's insane. That is absolutely insane. When it comes to Blake Bell and Noah Gray, I mean, I think there are a lot better options. You know, they're $200. I think there are much better options. If you had to choose between one, I'd probably just go with Blake Bell because he's getting more of the snaps. But I don't think I'm gonna have any of these guys. I just really don't. I don't think I'm gonna have any.
Yeah, there's no reason to. I mean, same thing that we've said on most of these at this point, right? Like, there's just better value. Play Zay Jones instead.
Oh yeah, big time. Harrison Butker, 4K. Daniel Carlson, 3,800. Butker, 4K, fine, whatever. Like kickers, yeah. Sometimes you have to have them in the slate. Sometimes, if you don't, you're gonna have a lot of leverage. They're both between 15 to 20% owned. I don't think you really need to go there in this price range because there's just so many other better options at this price range. I'll get a few lineups with them in. One thing to talk about here with Daniel Carlson, I mean, he did have a really bad miss at the end of that game, which really hurt them bad. But this team has struggled in the red zone, most likely because they're just double, triple teaming Waller and no one else is really that good at wide receiver besides Renfro. So they might stall out every once in a while in the red zone. We saw it last week. With Daniel Carlson, I think you could probably get a little bit more of him in a game like this. Butker, we know he can kick a 55-yarder with his eyes closed. So that would screw you if you got a couple of those. But look, every week we say the same thing. Get a couple of them. I'm going to be under the field. I'm never going to go heavy on kickers unless it's like a 35-point total or something like that. Agreed?
Yes, I think the one variation here is I will probably have a little bit more kickers than I normally would just because I'm going to be so heavy on the 4-2 stacks. I don't know kind of where we're going to end up landing with some of the pricing on there. And instead of taking 3 Vegas receivers in Carr, I might be more apt to take 2, a kicker, and then Carr. Yeah. So when you're looking from a roster construction standpoint, like when you're doing these 4-2 stacks, you might get a little bit to kind of balance out the 4. But again, I'm not prioritizing it. It's just going to be mostly to do something different.
Yeah. So defense, Raiders 3,400, Chiefs 3,200. I think you can play. I mean, we've seen recently some random defenses that you would never you would bet your life that they would have a bad game come out and absolutely crush. We saw with Miami against Baltimore. There's multiple other examples that I've forgotten about, but recently
the Titans last Sunday against the Rams. Yes. Nobody expected that.
So I'm not saying go heavy on these teams. I mean, they're going to be both around 10% owned, but I think you can get a couple of either of these guys in the flex. I really do. I really do think you can kind of. I'd rather have more defenses than kickers this week.
Yeah.
All right. Where are we at here? Let's do our fades here. All right. This is interesting. The moral of the story here on the fades is I'm not fading anybody.
I should have done something more creative like this. So just to comment on this, right, I think the reason why we're not specifically fading anyone is just because of the way the pricing works out on this slate. We're probably not going to be doing Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce together. So if you want to kind of call one of those guys our fade, it's going to be lineup specific, right? If I have Hill, I'm fading Kelce, or vice versa. So that's really what we need when we're saying we're not fading anyone. We just the way that the pricing works out is we're going to be forced to make decisions in each and every lineup. So we're not going to be actively looking to get rid of one guy specifically.
Yeah, I agree. And this is why, like a psychopath, I do for Showdown enjoy hand building. I know it's crazy, but when I'm optimizing these out, there's just so many lineups that I just don't, correlation wise, I just don't end up liking them too much. So in most cases I'm just hitting optimize with all my rules and letting it ride. But in Showdown with football, I like to build hand build because I can make those decisions a little bit easier. All right, so let's go to our Crown Their Ass segment. This is our favorite captain option for DraftKings.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
We're getting a little bit more creative on this one. Ellie, you're going with the tight ends as usual, and in Showdown slates recently in this entire year, pretty much, tight ends have crushed. I'm liking the running backs on both sides of the ball here, getting a fair share of all these guys. I'm going to be spread out on my exposure at captain this week. I'm not going to just be localized to like 3 or 4 captains like I usually do. I'm probably going to have a lot more. So, who's your favorite tight end option here?
I mean, the reason why you'd put both guys on the slide was because I can't choose. So
yeah,
put me on the spot again.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah, I hear you.
I think both are in play. I think I'll give a little bit of a bump to Darren Waller again without Henry Ruggs there. I really think that the Raiders are going to need to start getting him more consistently involved in their offense again. He's a game breaker. He has the ability to mess with your defense enough so that you can open up opportunities for the other wide receivers. I mean, he's up there with Travis Kelce and George Kittle, right? They're the top 3 tight ends in the league, and it's not particularly close. So I just, they got to get him involved. And I think that given his ownership and kind of where everybody's going to just normally go, I think Waller's probably my favorite right now.
Yeah, both of these running backs here are probably going to get overall forgotten about, and they're not going to be high owned in the captain at all. They're priced low enough that you could still do some things in the flex and still get all the studs in. I just think that their 2 touchdown upside is there in a game like this.
Well, dude, and not to interrupt you, but like you can throw in Kenyon Drake on that running back list too.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's going to get 15, 16 fantasy points at 4,400, the leverage or the flexibility you get at jamming him in a captain might be worth it. So
another guy I'm going to be going after is Bryan Edwards here. I got to get the sports carded. Bryan Edwards at that price, you know, you get a long reception from him, and maybe that's all you get. At that price tag, I like tossing him in a few lineups. All right, so let's build some lineups together here. We're at 37 minutes. We'll try to get this done quick. All right, so captain. Let's just optimize. Let's see what happens. Darrell Williams at captain, McKinnon, Drake, Hill, Carr, Mahomes. I don't hate it. I mean, if I wouldn't have Williams and McKinnon in. I'd rather go with Zay Jones instead of McKinnon. But don't hate it. All right, who do you want to go with? You want to go with let's build one with a tight end, one with a running back.
Okay, let's go. Let's start with Waller.
Okay, Waller. You want to go Carr?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Let's go Hill.
Okay.
I mean, damn, dude, just put in Zay Jones.
Yeah, it's too easy.
Can we? What does that do? Can we get Pat?
We can. But it's going to be tight. It's going to be 1,000 left, which is fine. But now you're punting twice, so you can get Derek Gore. You can get McKinnon, Ingold.
I don't mind McKinnon in that. So let's come off of Mahomes. Let's go to Darrell Williams.
Okay, love it. I think you got to get one of these running backs in your lineups here. 6,200 for the last spot. That gives you Bryan Edwards or Kenyon Drake.
Yep. Bryan Edwards.
Yeah, Bryan Edwards or Kenyon Drake.
Yeah.
Not bad. I like it. I mean, risky without Mahomes, but like I said, you put Darrell Williams in instead of Mahomes, I think it really, you got that leverage. All right, let's move over to the other side. I want to do one with Josh Jacobs. So Josh Jacobs ends up being a little bit cheaper. Let's get Carr in. Let's try to get Mahomes in this lineup, and then we'll switch him out. We got to go with let's go with in this lineup. Let's go with Kelce. And so that gives us Mahomes and Kelce, and you're seeing here, 3,800 for 2 spots. That makes it really tough. Let's go down and punt and get somebody low here. I would rather go Zay Jones over Ingold in most cases. That leaves us with 3,200. We get Byron Pringle or Foster Moreau. Or you can go down to Demarcus Robinson. I actually think Demarcus Robinson might be my fade of the night. I know it's not a bold take, but I don't think I'm going to have much of him at all.
What about maybe going? So, what about well, never mind. I was going to say throw in Jalen Richard and maybe Derek Gore instead of Zay Jones.
Yeah,
but
let's do it. Let's do it. Let's see. Where's Richard at? He's 1,800. 2K. That's Demarcus Robinson or Frank Gore Jr.
Yeah.
Let's take out Patty. Let's take out Patty. Okay, Kelsey, and let's do what I like to do here. Let's put Kenyon Drake in there as well. Carr, Drake, Jacobs, and I want to get one wide receiver from the Raiders. Let's go Bryan Edwards. Actually, let's see if we can get Hunter Renfrow. See if it's possible. That's 3,400. We're going to want to get one KC guy, and we're probably only going to be able to get a guy like Pringle. I don't love this. I'd rather actually come off of Renfrow, right, and get a little bit better of a Chief in here. Who should we go with from the Chiefs? Can we go with Williams?
I think that's what we got to do.
Let's go with Williams. That leaves us 4,600. That leaves us Deshaun Jackson, Harrison Butker, the kickers, the defenses, all the way down to Pringle. So rotate those guys out. Or what you could do is come off of Kelsey, go to Hill, and 3,600. That still doesn't do much for us, but you're leaving less on the table. You can go with Moreau. Can't get Pringle. Yeah, you can get Pringle. It's not bad. Not bad. All right. Let's talk about predictions here. Who is a low-owned guy this week that you think can score, and what's your final score prediction?
Damn, dude. I think the low-owned guy that I think can score might be Zay Jones. Like, he's just way low-owned.
Yeah.
And way too cheap. So, final score 27-21 Chiefs.
I really think that, look, Kenyon Drake could come in less than 15% owned. If that's the case, I think that qualifies for low owned on a showdown slate. I think he's the guy that can score. It's not a super bold take, but I really think that. Let me think of another guy here. Let's see. Can we get a Josh Gordon touchdown this week? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Anyways, my final score prediction, I think the Raiders win this 34-31. We've seen the Raiders step up, especially at home on these Showdown Island games. I think the Raiders can win this in a division matchup. And I'm telling you what, if the Chiefs lose this game, man, there's going to be something's going to happen. They're going to have to figure something out. All right, guys, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. Hit the like button on the way out and subscribe. See you later.